Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to today's edition of the An Evening With series, where we will be speaking to some of the brilliantly talented women of Formula One, brought to you by F1 and FIA Girls on Track UK, managed by Motorsport UK. I hope you are all doing fabulously, and thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with us tonight. I hope you're looking forward to it because I know that I definitely am. My name is Steph Turner, and I will be your host, asking the questions that you want to know the answer to. I currently co-host the Driven by Diversity podcast with Ariana Bravo, who did a wonderful job of hosting last night's session. And at the moment, I'm also doing a bit of work supporting Rob Smedley's Electroheads program on their marketing and partnerships. Previous to that, I've also supported F1 in schools on events at Silverstone and in Abu Dhabi. So I'm a huge motorsport fan, just trying to combine my passion with profession, as I'm sure a lot of you are looking to do as well tonight. So this month, we are giving you the opportunity to join these live webinars where you'll get to meet the various women of F1 who will provide you with a valuable insight into their current roles. The reason? Well, F1 is on a mission to diversify the sport and make it more inclusive. We, of course, saw this with We Racers One, the campaign that launched last season, and this mission has seen them team up with Motorsport UK to deliver these webinars, who themselves have a track record of empowering the next generation to enter the sport through initiatives such as Girls on Track UK. We want to champion and highlight the existing female talent in F1 to inspire you on your very own path into the industry, and we hope to see you all there one day. Now, before I make official introductions to this evening's speakers, time for a little housekeeping. Now, don't forget that these sessions will be recorded, so you'll be able to watch them again and share with any friends who may have missed it later on. We'll be putting them up on Motorsport UK's YouTube channel, as well as the Girls on Track UK community page on Facebook. Secondly, let me point you in the direction of our chat function. Please do use this to ask our speakers any questions, and we'll be asking as many of these as we can throughout the session. Do make sure that you use the chat, set it to everyone and not the direct message option, just because any here won't be picked up. So if you just go to the bottom of your screen on Zoom, there'll be a chat box. You can open that up and ask any questions through that. But as a little warm up, I'd love to try a little something that we did on the last session that I hosted a couple of weeks ago. I want to know just how worldwide we are tonight. So type hello in your native language and where you are watching from tonight. So I'd love to see that coming through. So let's have a look. Toronto, San Francisco, Shropshire, Mexico City, Switzerland, Poland, Dominican Republic. It's going crazy. That's amazing. So good to see so many of you here tonight. It's incredible. And thank you so much again for your time. We want this session to be as interactive and engaging as possible, not just on that chat, but also on video. So we want to see your lovely faces and your reactions. However, just as a heads up, because there are so many of you, you'll be on mute throughout and you won't be able to unmute throughout the session. Right, are we ready? Should we get into it? So tonight we will be hearing from Michaella Snoeck, who is head of media rights at Formula One, and also Ashley Wilson, who is the archive assistant within TV Systems. Firstly, let's hear from Michaella and hear all about her role before moving on to Ashley very shortly. Hello, Michaella, how are you?
Good evening, I'm very well. And just wanted to say it is so fantastic to see so many faces from around the world. Thank you to everybody for joining us this evening or this morning or wherever you're dialing in from. So thank you very much. It's an absolute honor to be here and I appreciate the invitation. So thank you very much. I am head of media rights at Formula One, and that is predominantly managing our international distribution of our live rights. So basically technically sales of our product. And that's across Formula One and some of our support event properties, so Formula 2 and Formula 3. We obviously distribute those rights to globally to all of our international broadcasters. As part of my role, I manage a small team of account managers. It's a very critical role of highly skilled individuals who obviously manage all of the contractual deliverables of those partnerships. And that's very, very varied. It can really range from getting broadcasters ready to come on site, managing their marketing and promotional campaigns, sourcing content for some stuff that they're producing. So, a very, very varied role, but very exciting nonetheless. And the sales and the account management side of our team very much sit hand in hand and are critically important to our partners.
So can you just explain what rights actually are for anyone who might not understand what that term means in relation to Formula One and what you do in your role?
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, as I said, it's managing our live rights. Everything that we produce from track, obviously, we distribute internationally to partners, obviously on a live basis, also on a post-produced basis as well. And we have a secondary team within our department that manage our ancillary and archive sales. And that's anything from, you know, a production company calling up and making a commercial that they'd like a few clips of rights to include, or, you know, BBC asking for a couple of clips for a news edit and things like that. So again, quite varied.
Yes, definitely does sound varied, and I can imagine that keeps you on your toes as well with everything that must go into that. Can you run through for us what a typical day would look like for you? So for example, what's the first thing that you do when you open your laptop in the morning?
Sure. At the moment, it's super busy because obviously we are getting ready for pre-season testing, and obviously our first race on the calendar, which is Bahrain. So it really is at the moment is, you know, our right cycle is pretty much complete. We're very lucky to be in that position. So, you know, at the moment, it really is the focus on getting our broadcasters ready for not only pre-season testing, but to come on site for Bahrain. At the moment, it's a little bit tricky because obviously we are working within the pandemic. So we have a couple of restrictions. So, you know, we obviously went through a cycle on the back end of last year where we had quite a condensed season. So it's just making sure that we manage those partners quite carefully in terms of what they can and can't do in terms of coming on site. So day to day at the moment is very varied. No day is the same, which is absolutely why I love my role. That's fantastic. You know, today we worked with quite a few partners in terms of getting them ready for testing, but a lot of the focus really is on marketing and promotion at the moment, you know, promoting the sport, you know, engaging their viewers to tune in for season start and things like that. So again, you know, it is quite a varied role.
Definitely sounds like you have sort of involvement and collaboration with different teams within the organisation and outside the organisation as well, but we'll come on to that a little bit later.
Sure.
Ashley, let's bring you in. Can you just explain to our audience what your role is in archive assistant and TV systems, what that involves, please?
Hi, yes, good evening everyone, and my name is Ashley Wilson. I've worked for F1 now for about 4 years this cycle, because I've also worked for F1 about 21 years ago, and I was doing something very different then. So at the moment my title is archive assistant, but I also have a sort of a secondary role which complements the archive work, and that's VTR, so videotape recorder, and that's during the actual live broadcasts.
Fantastic. So I guess for any race weekends, you're going to be, are you at Biggin Hill based there watching
I am.
the races? Yeah. So can you talk us through what you do on a race day?
Okay, so yes, I'm at Biggin Hill in the Technical Operations Centre, and I have all of the live feeds that are being broadcast anywhere around the world. That's the world international feeds, and it's also data feeds, and it's also on-car recordings, or the OBC that the cars are recording. And I'm recording those feeds in lots of different formats. So it might be the clean feed, the dirty feed with the graphics on, and then all of those are taken for storage, which are later put into our archive, which is why I say one job sort of complements the other.
Fantastic. I'm sure you have watched hours and hours of footage in your role.
Yes.
How does your role differ then when it isn't a race weekend compared to, for example, now when we're sort of in the off season? How does that differ?
Okay, so that's really where my archive assistant role comes into play. So as I said, all of those feeds, all of that data that's come into Biggin Hill during the live broadcast then has to be processed and put into our archive. And then there's another process then of logging every single asset that's been created. And of course, we're looking at thousands of clips, really, because all the RF cameras are sending back footage as well. So all the camera rushes, they will all get loaded into our archive system. And then we are responsible for trying to log each one of those to enable, say, an editor or a producer in the future to be able to find exactly what they need and extract the footage that they need.
Wow, I can imagine that is a lot of work to go through all of the hours of footage that Formula One creates and produces. How do you do that? Do you have a team behind you or a team with you that works to do that? How many of you that are involved with that process?
So there's only 2 full-time members of staff. That's myself and another archivist. But we manage a small team of loggers.
Okay.
And they are contractors and casual staff. So they obviously are employed because they've got very good knowledge of F1. We also are still in the process of actually backlogging historical content as well.
Okay.
But during the current season, our priority is to log all the new content that's come into the building. So we focus on that first, and then in the downtimes, such as now, we might be looking at some of the historical footage that we've got that still hasn't been archived.
Wow, that sounds fascinating, and I'm sure as an F1 fan like you are, like I know you are, that must just be amazing for that to be your job every day, just watching Formula One.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, and the best time is during the live broadcast when I basically get paid to watch F1, which you know I would be doing it anyway at home, so I might as well get paid for it too. It's brilliant.
Can't get any better than that. Michaella, let's swing back to you. So Ashley's just talked us through there how her role would differ in the off season compared to when it's a race weekend. Do you find within your role that there is a stark difference in terms of the roles and the responsibilities that you undertake?
Sure. I think we work in cycles, obviously, in the actual traditional sales cycle. Obviously, some of our contracts are, certain length of term, 3 years, 2-3 years at a time. So obviously that right cycle continues. In terms of the off season, obviously it's that preparation then for pre-season again. So there isn't a traditional break in the season like probably there used to be. Obviously the traditional summer break in the back end of August, there is a slightly quieter time, but we're certainly always forward planning. When we have a quiet moment, we need to kind of think about where we need to be in the next few months and just make sure that we're tracking on target.
Fab. Cool. So we've had some questions in, which I'm just going to filter into our chat just now. So we've had one from Lena, and this is to both Michaella and Ashley. So Michaella, if we start with you, what do you like most about your work?
What I love most about my work is how varied it is. It is absolutely exciting. No 2 days are the same. I absolutely love the sport. So, being able to be privileged to work within Formula One and motorsport in general is a passion. My family come from an engineering background, so always been in the car environment. My father had a rally team, so that was really exciting. So I think landing up in this position is an absolute privilege. Also, it's about the give back, and I think that's a little bit about this evening, and I'll come on to that later in the chat. But I think every day we're making history. It's giving back, it's encouraging people into the sport, not only on the racetrack but also behind the scenes, the engineers, people in media roles, people in production roles. And I think that for me is an absolute privilege to be able to carry the baton for the sport and encourage others to get involved.
Brilliant. That sounds fantastic. Ashley, how about you?
I've touched on that already, where I said I get paid to watch Formula One, which I can't really ask for better than that. I have always loved it. I've always had a passion for the sport as well. I've watched it since I was a small girl. So that for me, to be totally immersed in it every day and to be doing a job that I absolutely love is just wonderful. I think also Michaella said something similar there about making history. It's the fact that my recordings during the live broadcast, people have said to me before, you know, if you don't record this and get it right, then it's almost like it never happens, because that's like the key physical evidence that this race happened wherever it was in the world, and you know, it's going to be stored forever in our archive. And I think that also makes me realize as well how fantastic our technology is, how especially in the last year where we've had to operate remotely, sort of at the drop of a hat as well. It's sort of like forced us into a position which we didn't expect to be doing this early. You know, but when I look at the onboard cameras, which I can see every single car on the screen in front of me, and there's a lovely chap who sits behind me, and if, say, one of the cameras gets a bit of dirt on it or gets a splodge in it, he can literally just operate that camera and clear that screen. And it's quite mind-blowing when you think that car is going, you know, 200 miles an hour on the other side of the world, and there's a guy sitting behind me that can change it. It's just, the technology is just incredible, and that side of it, being involved with all of that and learning more about it, and you know, how it's developing is amazing. That's unreal.
That kind of gave me goosebumps there, the fact that you know, first of all, you're making history, and that's a really, really important point, that if you don't log a certain piece of footage, it might get forgotten about it, and you know, it won't get resurfaced. And then the second point there about controlling a camera on a car across the other side of the world, that's incredible. You know, we think about the technology in Formula One on the cars, but there's so much more around, even just like the broadcasting side as well. So that's incredible. We've had a question from Eka, who asks, do you work with video only, or is it photo as well, in terms of the footage that you look after?
Oh, right. So, well, I know that there are lots of still images that are generated through each and every race, but personally, I'm not involved with that. So I'm literally just involved with the digital feeds, the live feeds.
Okay, brilliant. So, Michaella, we touched on the fact that you have to deal with sort of departments internally, but also externally, partners and whatnot. Can you talk us through a bit about who you would need to collaborate with or work with on a daily basis, both inside and outside of the organisation?
No, sure. I mean, we work very closely with our production team on a day-to-day basis in terms of our programming output, and internally as well. We work, well, obviously day-to-day with our legal team, obviously with all of our contracts that are going out for our commercial partnerships, and then also with our marketing and sponsorship teams. I think that's probably key from a day-to-day aspect. In terms of externally, obviously directly with our broadcasters or some of their production companies, we don't work with too many agencies. We have a couple of agencies that we work with in terms of rights that we manage, but you know, core, we have a rights team in-house. We distribute all of our rights from internally. So not too many external agencies and partners, but more very closely working internally, you know, with Ashley and her team on the production side and things like that. That's, you know, critical for us.
Okay, brilliant. So you do work sort of closely together, maybe not personally, but your teams, Michaella and Ashley, together.
Well, definitely our teams overlap, and also, you know, as I said earlier, with our ancillary and archive team, and the day-to-day requests around, you know, some archive programming and things like that, is obviously there's overlap there. But we work very, very closely with our colleagues down in Biggin Hill at our MNTC office. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And Ashley, how about for you? Obviously, Michaella's just touched on there that your departments work together. Do you have to work with anyone else in the business or outside of the business?
Very much so, very much within the business, indeed. I always think the archive is kind of like a little bubble, or kind of imagine it like a spider's body. Mm-hmm. So we're like, the archive is the body, and then all the other departments kind of branch off from us. And you know, it's incredible actually when you think how many people do have a need to tap into that archive at some point. So yeah.
That leads us nicely into a question that we've had from Annette. So you talk about tapping into the archive there. She's asked, what is your favourite footage from the old days? Have you come across any hidden gems? Sorry to put you on the spot there.
That's putting me on the spot. There's lots of hidden gems in there, and I don't actually do so much of the actual logging so much now. I did at the beginning. I'm more sort of managing the teams of loggers, but quite often I would come across a clip which, I'm supposed to be doing something else, but it's so fascinating, and I kind of get completely drawn into the whole race again. I start watching the moment over again, and sometimes it might have been something I remembered from my childhood, and I'm sort of reliving it again. So it's very easy to get drawn into it.
That's amazing. So at the beginning of our call, you mentioned that you actually started at Formula One 21 years ago in a different role to what you're doing now, and that was the first sort of cycle of your work at Formula One. What was that out of interest? How did you come into business?
So, believe it or not, I was called a script writer.
Okay.
Which you wouldn't really think that there was much need for, but it's because at that point we generated an end of year review video. That's how old I am. It was on videotape, and it had a voiceover, and I would be the script writer for that voiceover. So it was working very closely with the producer, looking at the clips that they were going to select to go in the video, and then basically putting a voice to it. I mean, I didn't voice it myself, but I collaborated with the voiceover artist as to what they should say, what emphasis they should say. Yeah. So that was my role.
How interesting. That's so cool. Brilliant. Yeah. So how long have you been at Formula One in your current role now? And did you come into business in the role that you are now?
Yes. So I've been I've been here, I should say, not there, here about 4 years now in my current role. I did start off just as a logger, which is, that role that I've just described. And then very, very quickly took on a bit more responsibility. I was just casual staff to begin with. Then I became a permanent member of staff. Then I became full-time. And so now I'm sort of managing a team of loggers. I always did the VTR role on the live broadcasts, pretty much right from the start. But even now, there's so much opportunity to, to sort of try your hand at new things. That's another thing I really love about F1, is that they don't sort of pigeonhole you at all. They don't say, this is your role and that's what you're doing from now on. There are so many opportunities. If you express an interest, you can have a go at other things and learn new skills. So yeah, that's another thing I really love it for.
That's really encouraging. That's really, really good to hear. And it looks like, Michaella, that you were agreeing with that there.
Yeah, no, I am. I certainly think so. I mean, I've been very lucky to be able to get involved in other projects as well. I mean, just sitting with a colleague this week and kind of chatting about satellite feeds and delivery and technologies that are, advancing so quickly. And like Ashley was saying, it's like, put your hand up. There's always a question to be asked. Explore and find out more information, and get involved. I think for everybody on this call, it's like always try and get involved where you can, because that's how you learn. We're always learning. Knowledge, as my father used to say back in the day, knowledge is power, and it really is. It's like explore and ask the questions. Don't be shy. I think in my younger days, you probably sat quietly in the corner and didn't really ask much, but it's definitely put your hand up and ask the question.
Yes, absolutely. So you've actually been with Formula One now for just over 3 years, if that's right, but you didn't actually come into the company in the role that you're in now. It was in the same department, but it was a slightly different role, wasn't it? And now you've progressed to head of media rights.
That's correct. Yeah. No, I've been with the company just over 3 years, as you say. When I first joined, I was predominantly still, on the live rights, side, sales side, but predominantly managing our support properties. So Formula 2, Formula 3 and Porsche. That's how I started, then progressed into the role that I'm in now, in terms of also sitting across our core rights, being Formula 1, and then obviously managing a team of account managers as well. So I have progressed within that 3-year cycle.
That's great. And what was it that initially attracted you to join the company? Why F1?
I think, passion for motorsport, passion for being in sport and right sales, and, Formula One is the pinnacle of that. So again, very lucky and privileged to have this role. My background's always been in sports media rights distribution. I've also worked on the production side as well. And this was, very, very much kind of a blend of both almost. I'm very much focused on the media rights side, but there's also production side to the role in terms of, like I was saying, in terms of the readiness and the support to our broadcasters, coming on site and doing their production. So great role, it's a dual role, and it carries through with what experience I've brought from my career to date.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it sounds varied as well. You sort of have quite a broad overview. And with that, Aurora has asked, what has surprised you most about your job?
What surprised me most about my job? How fantastic and diverse the company is. As an outsider, people say, Formula One, it's a very male-dominated sport, but actually when I arrive, it is incredibly diverse. There are some phenomenally talented females and males in the building, and it's just an incredible place to work. And Ashley touched upon this as well in terms of how talented the individuals are. We work with the most incredibly talented bunch of people, and that's inspiring as well.
Oh, I love that. And Ashley, what's it like for you? What has surprised you the most about your job, either in the first cycle or the second cycle? Because growing up as such a big Formula One fan, is there anything you came into the company and realised wasn't, surprised you, but in a good way?
I think I have already touched on the technology side of things.
Yeah.
That for me has, it's quite mind-blowing what we can actually achieve. And I think when perhaps people are at home watching F1 on television, they don't really have much concept of how much organisation goes into putting that on your TV screens. There are so many people in so many different capacities making that happen, and also the technology that's involved with it. So when I came into it 4 years ago, I didn't really have much concept of how things connected anymore. As I said, previous to that, I was working with videotape, where now everything's different, it's all digital. And I've had to really relearn all of that, and just the concepts of how this piece of information gets from A to B across the world. It's just phenomenal.
It's really crazy, isn't it? And it's incredible how technology has come such a long way in such a short space of time as well. So that's really cool that you've been able to live that as well through your job, which is amazing. But let's now sort of focus on your path to F1 for both of you. So Pauline has asked, did you both have a background in motorsport or sports in general before landing your jobs in Formula One? Michaella, let's start with you.
Sure. I didn't have a background in motorsport specifically, but in sport. My career to Formula One to date was, I was very lucky to have roles at ESPN, and I moved then into World Rugby, and then I moved across into Formula One. So always been on the sport media rights side. I think I always wanted to work in production. When I grew up in Cape Town, I worked on production in fashion, and that's how I started. And then when I moved to the UK, wanted to carry through into production role. I started out in a very small post-production house in Soho, and then progressed into a production role, and then from there into sport and sport production and media rights. So, it's been a bit of a journey, but it's been, the last few years has always been in sports media rights roles.
Okay, brilliant. And how did you go from sort of fashion to sport? Was that the plan? Did you always sort of have that interest in both areas, or had you wanted to come into sport from the outset?
I always wanted to go into sport. I think that, you needed to start out somewhere. I moved from Cape Town to the UK, and then, wanted to get stuck into a production role. It's about getting your feet in the door, knowing the industry, starting to make contacts. And then actually moved out of that post-production house, got poached by a client into a production company that asked me to come and work for them, and then moved from there. I went from that production company to Laureus doing the World Sports Awards. Oh, wow. And then moved into the sports, vein. So very lucky and very privileged. And I think this industry is, as you get into the industry and you start moving, partnerships and friendships and mentors are so important. I couldn't highly recommend that enough. Make sure that you start connecting with people, because it's the relationships at the end of the day that matter the most.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a key theme actually that we keep seeing throughout these sessions from our speakers, how important networking has been for them throughout their career. But Ashley, would you say that was the same for you? What was your background coming into your role?
100%. I couldn't agree more with what Michaella just said. And in fact, if it wasn't for forming those relationships and that sort of networking, I probably wouldn't be back in Formula One today. I'd had a huge gap between my first stint and now. So, and as I said, everything would have progressed, or everything did progress in terms of technology. So it was just because I had forged connections with people who happened to still be working there. And, I was sort of in the job market again, and I needed a fresh start, and they were good enough to give me an opportunity. So absolutely 100% what Michaella just said.
Brilliant.
I think Stephanie, sorry to interrupt you, I think it's really critically important for events like this evening as well. The pandemic has created this slight loss in people's partnerships, and having events like this, I think we can really connect and get together, and people that are on this call tonight, feel free to reach out to us afterwards. We can certainly look to support as well in terms of your career development and starting to make those connections, because the pandemic has made it incredibly hard for everyone, senior levels in the industry, people starting out. I think we all need to kind of collaborate a bit more.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree with that. And sort of similar to what we had been discussing earlier in the day, Michaella, it's so important to network and have these opportunities, because previously, like when I was growing up, there wasn't the kind of resource like this available. So it's really, really great to see that things like this are happening. So everyone watching, you're in for such a good evening, and for all of the other sessions as well that have been going on, because you're getting this insight firsthand from the people that actually work at Formula One in motorsport. So it's really good. And also, although the pandemic has sort of moved us further apart in terms of we're not actually able to connect physically, it sort of made the world a bit smaller as well, because a lot of people are now connecting virtually and are more open to connecting virtually. So yeah, I agree with that. I definitely would recommend just reaching out, and if there's anything that you want to know specifically, or anything that you think might be able to help you on your way, then absolutely go for it.
Can I just say as well that when I was growing up, and as you just said, there were no resources like this at all. And I have not come from a family who were in motorsport or television or anything such like at all. I had no idea what opportunities were out there, or even what kind of careers existed. And I've literally just kind of stumbled along the way. So now you have all these resources to go and find out, and don't be limited by what you think are the only job opportunities, because you'll be amazed at what other careers there are. Absolutely.
You've got to think outside the box, but sometimes you need to see it before you can really grasp it and know that it's realistic. So yeah, things like this evening are definitely very beneficial. Linking to the pandemic, Candice has asked, how has the pandemic changed your ways of working? Ashley, would you like to touch on that? If it has changed your way of working?
Yes, well, it has to a degree, in the sense that we would often fly our whole broadcast centre to whichever location in the world the race was at. And of course, now we're pretty much operating remotely with a much more sort of skeleton staff actually based at the circuit. So that was a huge difference for us. And it was just trying to ensure that we still had the connectivity, that we could still do everything that we did, and put on exactly the same program that we had always done, and I hope that not many people have seen any difference between what we produced in 2020 to what we were doing in 2019.
That must have been a huge change from, doing it like that for all those years, and then suddenly, unexpectedly, having to completely change all of the processes and the ways of working. But I think you've done a brilliant job, because I've not personally noticed anything different. So well done.
Thank you.
Michaella, I can assume that maybe perhaps certain races you would have gone to visit and sort of speak with partners and negotiate, etc. I can imagine that has really changed the way that you work. Would that be a correct assumption?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think what's changed the most is we've had to be really flexible and adaptable, and making sure that, we look at when we stopped racing, we quickly look at and evaluate what content we can produce and put out to our broadcasters to start fill their scheduling. And then also just continue the process in terms of how we can better support them. We've changed a lot of structures on site where we've got a limited amount of broadcasters coming on site, but making sure that we better serve them, and also better serve those that aren't able to travel, for government or company restrictions. So creating more content, pooling that on a digital platform so everybody can access that fantastic content that our colleagues at MNTC produce. And then also making sure that we also adapt in terms of, just internally within our teams as well, making sure that our colleagues that are working from home are all okay. And it's that, having that collaborative process and checking in, and also just doing some fun stuff too, just making sure that we all get together at some point and just talk about non-work stuff, because I think the pandemic's been really hard for people that are trying to juggle kids, and everybody's had to readapt, and it's just really about facing a challenge and being flexible and making sure that we're servicing our key partners, but also making sure that we're looking after our people. And I think the company's done an excellent job at that in terms of making sure that everybody's okay and we can all kind of get together, because we had such a condensed season and we had to deliver so much and really just completely put it on its head in terms of how we deliver our product. So yeah, we've changed a lot, but I think for the better. And like Ashley said, in terms of our remote operations, that was really brought forward. It was always the plan to go remote, but that time scale was brought forward quite significantly, and we certainly wouldn't go back. So we've put in a lot of positive change from the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. You've proved now that you can do it sort of off the cuff and really change your processes, but make them really work for the company as well. So that's really good to see. Let's move on to education now, because I know that there will be a lot of people watching tonight who perhaps are still at school or college or university, still studying, and sort of wondering what they should do, what their next move should be, what subjects they should study. Now, I don't know for either of you if what you studied, or if you studied, influenced your role and your career path, but Sophie has asked, what subjects did you take in school to get to where you are? Ashley, would you like to start?
Okay, so when I was at school, I think it was the idea that I thought I might want to be involved in the media was just kind of developing. But I don't think anyone back then actually kind of believed that would be a possible career option for me. So there wasn't a great deal of advice at all. I tended to do the sort of subjects that bit more sort of like media studies and English and things like that. But then when I moved on to I went to college and then I went to uni, I was much more focused then on the subjects that I thought would help me. So I did media communications, and then when I finally went to uni, I did film and video. That was my degree.
Okay, brilliant. So it does seem like then that your education has really transferred into your role now then?
Not immediately, I have to say, because after I left uni, it didn't quite take the path I thought it was going to, and I ended up working in journalism for quite a few years. I think I was very good at the sort of English and the written communication, so it just kind of happens that way. Yes, so and I've been very fortunate now that I've kind of come full circle, and I'm actually sort of working in the television environment.
I guess that's really nice, and that's actually quite comforting to know that what you set out to do originally have ended up there, kind of like fates, I guess, which is really
definitely
nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Michaella, how about you? Was there anything in particular that you studied, and did it help you on your career path?
No, I mean, certainly not. I think, when I first started out, I started and did marketing, and, I wanted to land up in the advertising industry. Obviously, close, but not quite there. And I certainly think that the subjects that I did at school as well didn't align either. And I think it's, you can get to where you want to go with a lot of hard work and dedication and passion for what you do. And I don't think it's, yes, it's, it is something to have a degree and go into a particular field. But, if you want to change careers and go in a different path, certainly, just put a lot behind it and you will get there if you're passionate enough and if you want it enough as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really important. Like, obviously you can study what you want to go on to do and get there, and that's absolutely brilliant. And they're the lucky ones, like Ashley. But then
no, absolutely.
You have the other side that, who not everyone knows what they want to do at 16 or 18 or whatever it is, whatever age that you need to start choosing your subjects. But as you say, Michaella, with the passion and with the drive, hopefully you'll get there to where you want to be, which is fantastic.
Can I just cut in? Sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but there's a very good case of comparison, if you like, from when I was much younger and going off to study. I was absolutely adamant. I had a very, very close friend, best friend, and we both wanted to do the same thing. And I was adamant you had to go and study and get your degree and get all your qualifications. And he said, no, he goes, I'm just going to go and get experience. And just to put that into perspective, he got the experience, just worked his way up from the bottom and had a very, very successful television career just because he was doing what Michaella has just said. He was dedicated, passionate. He made himself available and he did anything anyone asked him. And he's actually sort of semi-retired now. He's the same age as me. So, he obviously did very, very well. So there's a lot to be said for that as well. Just make yourself available, make the contacts like we were talking about before. It doesn't all have to be around academic subjects. Not everyone's academic. University isn't for everyone.
That's fantastic advice, and I couldn't agree more, because it's so true. Like, there are so many different paths and different ways in, so kind of take what you feel is right at the time with the information that you have available to you, and just keep the dream alive, keep the goal in sight, and hopefully you will eventually get there with that drive. Fab. So Radanella has asked to both of you, Michaella and Ashley, what has been the most memorable experience whilst working? And that links quite nicely into a question I wanted to ask in terms of something that you've experienced at F1 that you would love to relive. Ashley, would you like to go?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd like to relive it necessarily, but in reflection, it was absolutely amazing. So back in 2019, I was very fortunate to go out to a few races, and one of those was Japan. Wow. And I don't think it's a country that I would have ever had the opportunity to visit if it wasn't for my work. So that was a big bonus. But it just happened to be when Typhoon Hagibis was was going to hit. So I was part of this kind of incredible evening. The broadcast centre is designed to be a portable structure, so it's not very secure, and it's obviously housing all of our equipment in it. So we had to be very careful what happened, and the call was made very late that there wouldn't be any racing or any activity on the Saturday. So Friday we did a full day work, and then we had to de-rig the whole entire broadcast centre and then re-rig it in one of the garages at the end of the pit lane, all in one night. So we did a day's work and then worked through the night and re-rigged everything. And it was just it was unprecedented. It had never happened before. And then obviously we had to go back to our hotels and wait for this storm, which they were describing as the biggest storm on earth. What's going to happen? Fortunately, everything was okay. There was a lot of water, but we weren't sort of lost in the typhoon, so it was okay. But yeah, I mean, we were recognized for that in the media as well, because it was just unprecedented what we'd achieved.
Yeah, I remember following that, and actually Catherine Rains just said she was there at that race. But I remember following it and thinking, this is crazy, what's going to happen? And then Sunday morning, it was blue skies, sunny, I think.
Yes, it was. Yeah, you would never have believed it.
No. Michaela, how about you? Is there anything that you would love to relive that you've experienced working at Formula One?
Yeah, I think I'm absolutely passionate about technology, and it really ties into Ashley's story about the broadcast center. I think the first time I walked into the broadcast center, I was literally blown away. I'd never seen anything like it. I've been in OB trucks and things like that before, but it's just certainly nothing like what we used to cart around the world. And it's just absolutely mesmerizing. And even bringing, commercial clients into the broadcast center, I think it was slightly off limits before, but certainly now we bring some of our commercial clients in to experience it and to sit in the back of the gallery, and just their faces and their experience. It just brings me back to that first day that I walked through those doors. Amazing. It's absolutely amazing to take a step back and look at what we achieve, week in, week out, in terms of across each race weekend. It's so much going on. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I've got some friends that have experienced the same thing, and they've said exactly the same as you. It's just insane. Just walking in, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool. Amazing. So we've had a question from Maria. This one's for Michaela, and she's asked, what would be the one thing you look for on a CV? So I guess in terms of if you were to hire someone, what would be the qualities and sort of the experience that you would look for in someone wanting to work in media rights?
No, sure. I think it's definitely dependent on the role and the core transferable skills. Obviously, that's quite critical. But also looking at experience. We've had colleagues in the past that haven't come, in other roles, that haven't come particularly from a media rights background and maybe be applying for a media rights role, but they've certainly got experience, that is relatable to that particular position. So, I think that's kind of the core. And then also just, it's hard to pick up from a CV. It's definitely that first interview stage where you can kind of, pick up on the individual. But it's, again, I go back to the passion piece, really the way you deliver yourself and in that interview, it's not only your core skill set, it's also about your people skills and your personality and, how you'll fit into the business, how you'll fit into your team. So I think try and come across. I think this is also something that I just wanted to put out to everybody on the call as well. I've recently done 2 cycles of hiring process, and it's really fascinating to see the diversity between, candidates, and, some will be super, just more confident in terms of asking what they want. Be definitive in terms of what you want. Don't go into an interview and say, okay, I was on X and I just want X. Be confident, be passionate, like ask for what you want. So certainly in terms of that, yes, core transferable skills, but also at that initial face-to-face, make sure you come across in that interview process and do your research on the company, come with a bit of background. I think it's really tricky to interview somebody that just has done absolutely no research on the business or about the role or anything. So make sure you do your homework as well before your interview stage.
Absolutely, that's key. You've got to really want it and really portray that and put that across, especially at that stage, for sure. Ashley, through your time working with Formula One and the colleagues and people that you've been working with, what have been the standout qualities and features of the people that really excelled and you've really thought, wow, you're really good at your job?
Gosh, so many. I think because I work a lot with the engineers, the digital engineers, I'm very much embedded in that department. Quite often I feel like they're speaking another language. It's the technology, it's completely, some of it anyway, it's completely over my head. So I've had to make that one of my aims, is to sort of learn a lot more and become a better technician, really. And so those kind of people who seem to have these enormous brains that can contain all this information are the people I really sort of admire. But I think anybody who can show that they are adaptable and anybody who is willing to learn as well. So there's no room for complacency at all. You can try your hand at everything, and definitely the people who are the most successful and that progress the quickest are the ones that would just have a go at anything. And F1, as we said before, is very good at creating opportunities for people like that.
Yeah, I could see Michaela nodding away there as well. You agree with that one?
Absolutely, 100%.
Brilliant. And I guess that kind of links into what Dariana has asked as well, in terms of the transferable skills that have been most beneficial throughout your careers in motorsport. What would you say on that, Ashley? Would you just sort of repeat what you've just said, or are there any kind of key ones that you have needed in your role that have been sort of advantageous to you?
I mean, it is very much repetition of what I've just said, but I think also you need to have good communication skills as well. I mean, our whole business is about communication to some degree. So you have to be good. You have to be quite personable. You know, it's very important to be good, a good team player as well.
Brilliant. Michaella, Radinella has actually asked, what motivates you at work? And I think that's quite an interesting question. So I'd like to ask you that one, if that's okay.
Sure. I think what motivates me at work is, like I said, every day is very different, and you know, it's that putting into making sure that the output is the best that it can be. You know, we have some critical clients around the world, and making sure that we support them, you know, throughout the process in terms of, you know, the content that we produce and what we deliver to them. And that's, you know, certainly what motivates me. It's always, you know, every day can be better. You can always better yourself, and it's putting in that extra, you know, 1% every day.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to keep going for it and keep pushing as well. Fab. So I'd just like to touch now on advice that you would give listeners, sort of relating to what we discussed earlier with the education side of things, because we didn't touch on apprenticeships or internships or anything like that. So the alternatives to just pure studying. Have you got any advice for listeners interested in your field who might be wondering what they should study, if they should study, or if they should go for an apprenticeship or internship? What would you say would be best, Michaella?
I think it certainly depends on the person. You know, Ashley touched upon this earlier. You know, if that's the way you want to go and you want to go and get a degree, then absolutely, you know, you should continue on that path. If that's not something for you at that particular time, and you maybe want to take a break and try an internship, absolutely. I think, you know, previous employer had a fantastic internship program. I've seen a lot of people and colleagues in the industry now that have gone on to be very successful in those companies, you know, that really shone in those roles that they took on initially. So I think certainly it's up to the individual, you know, whatever path you want to go down. I think either way, you can certainly be quite successful in the industry. But certainly I know that our particular business, we will be rolling out an internship program as well. So, you know, opportunities for others, but certainly lots of media related companies in our industry do offer fantastic programs.
That's very interesting. So keep an eye out, everyone, on those internships that potentially might be coming up. But you touched on a very good point there, that it's, you know, you don't just need to look at F1, you don't just need to look at motorsport, potentially just sport as a wider industry. So I know, Michaella, you have quite a lot of experience outside of that. You mentioned rugby and Loris as well. So that could be equally as beneficial, gaining your sort of initial experience outside of motorsport and then transferring that, bringing that in once a role or an opportunity that is right for you that comes up.
No, absolutely. And I also think volunteering, you know, it is just about getting in, starting to make connections. So if you find particular roles where you want to volunteer, in terms of whether it be a charity or whether it be, you know, working for a governing body or anything like that, you know, working at a rugby match over the weekend and starting to make those connections. So, you know, definitely I think there are lots of opportunities for other. I've got friends in the industry that have transitioned careers, you know, 2 or 3 times. And it's just about, you know, starting at the bottom again and making those connections.
Yeah, for sure. So linking to, we were talking about the young people watching tonight. We're in a pandemic, obviously, it's no secret, but there are going to be young people coming up to graduation, whether that's in school or university, and understandably they might be worried about job prospects after committing years to studying something in their field that they want to go on to do. Is there any advice, Michaella, that you would give to these people to let them know that things aren't always as bad as they seem?
No, absolutely. I think with anything, you know, with any kind of challenge that you come across or any type of hurdle, you know, turn it into a positive and start putting in that focus in terms of taking it away from the pandemic. It's not about the pandemic. We're always going to have something that's going to create a hurdle. So make sure that you turn it into a positive and start progressing, putting that energy into trying to connect with people, if it's someone on LinkedIn, or somebody that has a friend in motorsport or in the industry, have that connection. I was quite passionate about a charity that I knew that one of our colleagues were involved in. So, it's just reaching out to them saying, hey, would there ever be an opportunity? And it might not be absolutely immediate, that particular moment in time, but who knows, 6 months down the line, it could lead to something else. And if I look back at my career, I've certainly been very fortunate to have those opportunities that arise. And, 2 contacts I had in the industry turned into job prospects later down the line. So, don't look at it as a challenge, try and look at it as a positive, and start plotting your next, really. You've got time now, we're in lockdown, start working on your research and your connections.
Yeah, no, I like that. And as you say, we've got the time now, so use it wisely. And although opportunities might not be immediate, you've put in the groundwork for potentially opportunities to come later down the line, which is always good. Ashley, I can see a little sign in the background saying half term. So I just wanted to touch on this briefly, because I know you won't mind me saying that you're a single mother of 3, and these talks aren't just about young people. Obviously, the main majority of people watching will be young people, but we have to keep in mind also there will be other people well into their working lives that are considering a change in career, or who have certain family commitments, etc. And they might think, or they might worry that they can't pursue their passions because of their family situation. What would you say to these people, and how do you ensure that you keep a good work-life balance?
It is very hard. I won't deny that. It's very difficult. And I think also because F1 often can involve unsociable hours and weekend work as well. So that work-life balance is quite tricky. But I couldn't do it unless I loved it. So if you know that it's something that you're absolutely passionate about, you will find a way to make it work. And, you just have to, fortunately, again, I say fortunately, F1 are very flexible. They're a very understanding company to work for. So they do take everybody's personal situations into account. And I've been very lucky to be with a great team. We all really support each other very well. At the moment, I'm able to work from home. So my children are obviously not at school. So we're all sort of juggling the computers around the house and things like that. But I think there's every opportunity at whatever age you are. Don't give up. If that is your passion and you're absolutely set on this would be your dream job, then you've just got to have a go and give it a go. As I said, I can do it, so I'm sure everyone else can too.
Oh, that's really reassuring, and that's really powerful advice and insight there. So it's always nice if you're in a situation that is similar to someone else's, and that you hear their story. It's really nice to be able to relate to that and think, actually, if they can do it, I can do it. So that's really good, and I hope anyone listening that can relate to that will be able to take that away as really good advice. Michaella, we're going to talk now, just before we wrap up for the evening, about girls who might not feel like motorsport is the place for them. How would you convince any girls who think this, that there is a rightful and valuable place for each and every one of them, if they, should they want to go and pursue their passion as their career in motorsport?
I think, like I said before, it's getting involved. If there's so many opportunities, and I think the pandemic has also created so many opportunities. Ashley touched upon it as well. When we were starting out in our careers, I think there were such limited opportunities available. There's so many different roles that you're probably not aware of, in terms of, whether that be across social media, whether that be within a team and an engineering role. There are endless opportunities. I think that the pandemic is also creating new roles, that I've heard of in other walks of life, in terms of, being remote managers, managing remote teams. We're always developing. There are always new roles coming through. And I think it's not just about those traditional roles that you're probably aware of. There are so many opportunities to get involved in. So don't think you're going to be pigeonholed into a certain career path or a certain role. If I don't have media rights experience, I can't do a media rights role. There might be other opportunities within the business, that you can get involved in.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that one there. And then so for a final question, I will pitch this both to you both. What advice would you give to your younger self? Ashley.
Gosh, that's a tough one. You put me on the spot. What would I give to my younger self? I was very determined, I think, and I think when a lot of other people around me didn't actually believe that I could have an opportunity for a career in television and broadcasting, I totally believed in myself. So maybe it's not sort of advice to how I would have changed things, but maybe the advice is stick to your guns. If you have that self-belief, stick with it.
Fantastic. And Michaella, how about you? Advice to your younger self?
Put more money in your pension. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, it is important.
No, I'm just joking. Obviously, be confident in your abilities and know your skill set. Know what you want. Be clear on your objectives, and ask for opportunities. Don't be shy. I've never met a successful person that hates what they do. So I think that those are some key takeaways, and especially with females starting out in the industry or more male dominated opportunities. I think don't be shy. Keep pushing and you'll get there. Put a lot behind it. You'll certainly be successful on your path.
Yeah, absolutely. Confidence goes a very long way. Absolutely. Okay, well, that's all we have time for tonight. That went very quickly, and it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to both of you, both Michaella and Ashley. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And thank you as well to everyone who tuned in, everyone who's watching around the world. I can't believe how many countries have been tuning in tonight. So thank you so much for your time. But we should also say thank you to F1, Girls on Track UK and Motorsport UK for organising this amazing session. There'll be a few more next week as well, so make sure you sign up to those. Please do follow as well on social media, F1, Girls on Track UK and Motorsport UK. I believe Charisma will be putting the links in the chat, so pop the box open, have a look, click on the links and follow those accounts, because you'll be able to connect with like-minded people, especially through the community page for Girls on Track UK on Facebook. And you'll also be able to sign up to the remaining webinars as well. So as I said, there's a few more next week which you can tune into, but you'll also be able to find any recordings that you've missed out on previously that we've done earlier in the month. So as I say, the links are in the chat now. There will also be a survey coming your way once the series has come to a close in the next week or so. This shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. We'd really appreciate your feedback. So once that comes through into your inboxes, please do give that a click and have a little look and fill that in. And other than that, we'll catch you on the webinars to come. And thank you once again to Michaella, Ashley, F1, Girls on Track UK and Motorsport UK. And thank you as well at home to everyone watching, and best of luck on your journey into the industry should you decide to go and do that. Thank you very much, everyone. It's lovely to speak to you all.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.